and one to Dani. I mean, it costs me money every time I create one of those widgets, right? But not in the case of these subscriptions. They being Politico, they've already spent the money. So everything that they get in all these extra subscriptions, that's pure profit, pure revenue. There's no cost of doing business built into that. So it's just purely a to hide the funneling of taxpayer money designed to spread propaganda.
Yeah, and they funnel it by doing the basic bare minimum work. Oh, we track legislation for people. Why does the government need a private party to track legislation? It's the government.
Yes, I know my opinions. I feel bad because I know the chat's going to attack me. I know everybody on the panel is going to be upset at me.
That's okay.
Because I gotta say what I gotta say.
Do it. Do it.
So I agree with most of the points, but I've worked for with the subscriptions, for instance. I've worked for many government agencies that paid for my subscriptions. One of the biggest subscriptions I had was Westlaw and LexisNexis. I didn't pay a dime because my government agency, when I was a prosecutor, they paid for the job.
Yeah.
And they also do this with, and when I was in other places, they had other subscriptions to this. Now,
yeah, that's appropriate.
I think people are confusing Politico, the news organization, with the Politico Pro service. The Politico Pro service in some areas, especially if you're doing government, if you're lobbying and doing stuff like that, there's like, for instance, the White House's cyber director just bought $35,000 worth of the Politico Pro premium subscriptions. And I'll only reason why, because I looked this up after me and Eric checked it out. Politico Pro is a collection of trade publications that track legislation, lobbying, and elections. Now, this is all for if you're in that particular world of lobbying. So that's why people buy the Politico Pro subscription, so they can also track it. For those of you who are in,
which is exactly
stocks,
relevant to USAID now.
No, I'm saying USAID, but they're one of the agencies who pay for that subscription. For instance, if you're in the
energy department, I think
not even the energy department. If you're doing stocks, the SEC, they pay for the Bloomberg towers. But
that makes sense.
With monitors,
that actually
so you can see with that. Yeah. So I'm not saying it makes sense.
And by the way,
USAID is not the only person who's paying for these subscriptions.
Bloomberg publishes their price. Bloomberg publishes their price.
But for instance,
you and I could go get that. We don't have to call and say.
For all of you lawyers here, for a long amount of time, Westlaw didn't publish how much you had to call them and to go and talk to them directly before, and now they've published them, but before a long time they didn't publish them. So I understand that argument, but I'm just saying, there are in this instance, some of the things that
there are some legitimate uses.
I'm not saying USAID is legitimate. I'm not saying that's legitimate. I'm just giving you the other perspective.
How much were you making, Nate?
That's right.
Where's your check? I couldn't find you on
Nate did nothing wrong.
Nate, also, for Westlaw, the amount they publish isn't necessarily what it costs.
No, here's the thing. Many of our viewers may not know what Westlaw and LexisNexis are. These are actual research tools that attorneys need to do their job better. It's more cost efficient to lay out the money for Westlaw and LexisNexis. If you're an attorney or you're a DA office, it's much more beneficial to you to lay out the cost for access for all of your employees, and Westlaw and LexisNexis both know this. It's much more beneficial to them to lay out the money, because these are the research tools we use in order to find cases that are on point and relevant to our cases that may be detrimental to our position. So this way we can refute them in advance rather than being getting hit from the side and not realizing that a case has been overturned or that it's easily distinguishable from our case. It's you're a much better lawyer if you have easy access to it. That is not remotely comparable to giving millions of people access to some political news article, which is not an inherent necessity for the performance of your job. So I mean, I agree with you. I certainly understand why every district attorney's office would be paying and every large firm would be paying for their employees to have access to those subscriptions, and that Westlaw and LexisNexis are probably not going to give them much of I'll give them some bulk discount rates, but they're not going to be giving them, for access for free, because they know that's where they're making their money from. That's the only source of their revenue. That's not remotely comparable to saying, oh, we need to give you access to New York Times. You work for the government. You need to know about New York Times, political, one thing after another. Why would that possibly be necessity for countless people in a job?
Just so you understand, just like you're saying LexisNexis and Westlaw is necessities for what we do. It's a database, for research tool database. Politico has the newspaper portion, which I think that's what you're talking about. Why should they have access to that? But they're actually paying for the research portal. The research portal shows the upcoming legislation. Like it has it all in one place. So they're paying for that. And they're not the only people paying for that. Other government agencies also pay for this research portal so they can do it. So it's their version of LexisNexis, but just in that particular sphere for lobbying, for statutes, for all that stuff. That's
Nate, I'm sure that some of those subscriptions are perfectly legit. I think there are probably some people that genuinely need that, but I think that it's real easy to over purchase these subscriptions as a way to funnel money back to the company, because you can't, all these people don't need that many subscriptions. That's just my take. I do have to run here in a minute. I just wanted to say, have a great weekend, everybody. If I disappear, nice to see all of you here, as well as those of you in the chat.
Same here. I'm gonna bail along with Phil.
Okay.
I wish I could hang out, guys. I've got a big week ahead. I'm going to be arguing in front of the Ninth Circuit in Honolulu.
Oh, nice. What time does our flight leave, Ron? I'll meet you at the airport.
Good luck, Ron.
I'm going to leave my proxy with Nate. Nate, okay? Are you good?
Sunday morning at 9:00.
Right.
Guys, have a great weekend.
Good luck.
All right, thanks.
Bye,
Dani,
guys.
you're
Bye,
up.
Ron.
All right.
Yeah,
If he has
so
a bad day, he's still in Hawaii.
I don't want to go far afield from what is the actual problem here. The actual problem here is that USAID is donating to the Rockefeller Foundation, which then donates to Democracy Now!, which then donates directly to news organizations and gives money to these nonprofit news organizations like I have here at the Salt Lake Tribune. And by the way, it was hilarious because I got attacked for pointing this out. All I did was point it out and said I felt very vindicated as a candidate. And one of the reporters from that news organization decided to bring it up on Blue Sky. He's no longer invited on Twitter because he tried to peddle child corn type books that were outlawed in our state to a bunch of kids after they were banned in our libraries. So
like there's a pattern over on Blue Sky.
Of all the people to attack me, I'm okay with that.
Blue Sky's a cesspool.
Yeah, and I want to make it very clear. I don't disagree with anything Dani has said. I just wanted to make sure the distinction between
there is a good distinction.
But everything that you said is absolutely true. They've been giving money. Like 97% of the money they give out is to Democratic causes, which is ridiculous.
Right. They didn't exactly have Breitbart
No.
They were. That's true. Breitbart wasn't on there.
And as Dani mentioned, it's a way to launder this money, and you track it along, and it's starting to end up in places, and as far as people were talking about the George Soros stuff, George Soros did this the smartest way in the world. He let the Open Societies Foundation go to the Tides Foundation, and then it starts filtering into DA's pockets. George Soros is doing this without having to spend a dime. He did it a very brilliant way.
Well, of course, he did get rich for a reason. I mean,
rich people stay rich by not spending their own money.
This question is on point, I think, too, though. Does Congress's authority to allocate funding give them the authority to compel the executive branch to disperse or spend those funds?
Not really. I mean, the government, the executive has the authority to execute the laws. Congress could try to attach some restrictions, but there have been many times where the Supreme Court's like, no, you can't restrict in that way. Now, there are times where they can put strings on the funding, but it's limited. It's, the separation of powers.
It has to begin with their origin, their originating bill. So if you create the FAA and you say, each year the FAA shall distribute its entirety or shall use the extent of its budget, then that's different. And the DOD has similar, for some sub agencies within the DOD, that's how they operate. So when you hear people saying, oh, I need to hurry up and run up my budget as quick as I can, it's because those agencies have requirements.
Yes, but a lot of the arguments now are being made about reliance too. Like a lot of these federal employees, you're funding us for a certain year. We've signed contracts, so now we're relying on that money to come in. So you can't
too bad
a certain amount. So but again, I think that works for the DACA. DACA,
that was a DACA thing.
That was all reliance, right?
But this is literally fraud. Like you guys were screwing around, and And Phil mentioned this before with the propaganda, and this is something I know, Eric, your friend Mark, you guys have talked about before on America's Untold Stories, is Operation Mockingbird. It never went away. They just changed how they did it.
Oh, and then they renamed another thing, Project Mockingbird, to try and further confuse the public.
It's no longer just the traditional way the church committee described it. They use different things now, and nowadays, especially like you see CNN, MSNBC, the amount of intelligence officials and the amount of glowies they bring on as consultants and contributors, they kind of cut out the middleman. They just bring them in, and then the money comes flowing in through the back door, and
would you look at this, Sean? I happen to have a thread pinned to my profile that I just put out, talking about social media Mockingbird, which is a term I'm going to claim.
Nice.
Where
it doesn't flow though. You need something.
It's a gaggle of birds.
Did you include the CIA's public notice saying we're hiring social media influencers?
No, not.
I'll have to send that to you.
And that makes sense, and I would expect the CIA wanting to be able to take to the battlefield on Twitter and Instagram, because dealing with foreign countries, this is how people communicate now. Like, I totally expect that, but we know they're doing it here too.
Well, it's not just the CIA. Hold on, the FBI's got their piece too.
Yes, they do too. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, remember, it wasn't the CIA that had weekly meetings at Twitter. It was the FBI.
Yep.
Well, I'm sure the FBI tipped him off of what's going on there too, though.
But I think Nate made a fair point, though. In contract law, there is a concept of what's written in an agreement versus an established course of dealing between the parties, and that there could be a creation of a contractual obligation to pay based on that established course of dealing. So in theory, if Politico, let's say for many years, has been reliant on them buying these subscriptions, even in theory, it's possible that could create some sort of obligation on the part of the government to at least give some sort of termination period rather than just cutting it short. I'm not saying I like it. I'm just saying that I can understand how someone can interpret the law fairly that way.
I can understand that too, but it's just like you sign a contract, you're organizing with somebody, and it turns out like somebody up the chain was a complete fraud and swindler and everything, and the whole project dies. Like,
right.
Force majeure, baby.
That's that
would
be a fact. That'd be a fact to consider.
Yeah, but you're talking about making that. You're talking about voiding the contract. So you'd have to then ask a legal, because you're saying fraud. So they would have to prove that fraud, obviously,
right,
to void the contract. Because if you have a contract for a year, you're still going to pay that year up. That's why I think Trump did the 8 months. Say, hey, because that gives you that reliance. That it essentially effectively moves that reliance piece. You got 8 months of pay before you get out of here.
That actually is a topic that we were going to talk about, but I want to get this in. USAID was also funding terrorist groups.
Yep. Yes, like the Ukrainian government.
Yeah. USAID is horrible. We all can agree.
It depends on the current target of the terrorist group.
Yeah,
it's nothing new. Been done for centuries.
Yes, HTS is now our friend apparently.
But don't forget, though,
the Mujahideen was America's friends in the 80s.
Yes.
We funded Bin Laden for a time. So.
Yes.
And Saddam Hussein. He was our buddy before he wasn't. Anybody followed Black Hawk Down? The guy behind that we funded. He was trained by the CIA.
Here's the difference with funding Bin Laden. But here's the difference with the whole funding Bin Laden, which is true. But we were funding him, I think, at a time where we thought he was the less extreme element. Over here, when we're funding Hamas in 2024, it's not that he's the less extreme element. America has a very rich and embarrassing history of supporting a new entity that's going to come over and hopefully take over for a worse entity, which 9 times out of 10, the entity we're supporting ends up being much worse than the one we originally were supporting. That goes all the way back to like the 1930s. I mean, we have a very rich history of making poor choices on who the new guy we like better ends up becoming. But that's very different. But right. Okay, fine. But precisely. But the point is over here, when you're funding Hamas, in 1.3 billion, according to the Daily Caller, in 2024, I mean, you know what they are. You've already labeled them a terrorist organization. There's no justification of we're hoping that they're better than somebody that we want to be deposed, and that they'll be the better option because they're already the worst option in the room. So
actually, Israel was kind of funding Hamas a little bit too. It's rumored.
But when Israel was funding Hamas, they were making the same mistake that America made, where they were hoping Hamas was better than the PLO. That's back when Hamas was in its infancy. That's different than funding Hamas when they're full-blown terrorist organization. That's my point. The timing on the funding is very significant.
And the human trafficking that we fund directly through USAID, I think needs
all the human trafficking through the Darien Gap.
It's not just that. No, I'm talking like actual buying and selling of children overseas. There's a reason why Russia banned any sort of adoptions for the US back during the Obama administration. And we scream about this. You guys, if you follow any one of our channels, I guarantee you each one of us at some point has screamed about US funding absurd and obscene projects that are morally reprehensible. I think what's important though is that finally there are so many people who have not been on notice who are now on notice. And it's really great to see. And I'm glad that we have DOGE because clearly OPM was not doing their job.
Well, it's kind of wonderful because this is not only exposing these projects, which is obviously important, but in my opinion, exposing who's defending it, exposing who's upset about it. That is really the enlightening part. You're going, wait a minute, why are you upset about USAID? Why, you Congress people, why aren't you lining up saying, you know what, you're right, we need to clean it up? You're actually defending this? That's very interesting. Why is that happening?
Yeah, and it's not just who's defending, and it's how they are defending. It's not, for instance, I saw this one in the example you show there, 6 million in funding tourism in Egypt. Well, that's planting spice.
Sure.
6 million. Yeah, you can understand that.
That might actually be defendable.
Why don't they defend? Okay, we understand this part. I mean, the many letters in Sahara, I don't know. But why not pick? Why go so broad? No, stop doing this. Okay. What exactly do you want us to stop doing? What do you want us to stop defunding? And why? Give us a damn reason.
Well, I think, again, and this is me just speculating, but when the CIA buys a toilet for $400, we all say, "Oh my God, the plumbers are taking kickbacks," right? We know the toilet seat doesn't cost $400, right? They're buying a $5 toilet and spending the money for something else. And I think that's what Rubio and everybody seems to be suggesting, is that USAID was that type of funneling source where you'll give $6,000 to teach DEI in Serbia, but that money's not going to any into DEI in Serbia. That money is going for obviously other things, and I think that's what's now being exposed, is that funneling apparatus, because USAID obviously looks like a fraud, but now it's just kind of like, okay, if we stop doing these things, what are the other repercussions? Because this is what most people know as soft pressure to other countries. Well, we'll take away this $1 billion we're funneling to you if you stop doing that. And that's what Hunter Biden and all of them were doing over there in Ukraine. That's kind of soft pressure. So,
Burisma was funded by USAID as well.
But and there's, I guess I just want to
share this. I shared this link with Eric. With Eric.
Hold on, let Ian talk.
Sesame Street.
Ian's been quiet now for a while.
This is Sesame Street, and I think that's money well spent. That's Sesame Street in Iraq.
I'll pull it up, but go on, Ian. I don't want to give him a chance.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, this is all U.S. politics, which I usually avoid.
And, to be fair, if you start scamming USAID money, I'm okay with that. You're foreign, so it counts. But Nate, you're talking about the soft power. Yes, soft power does have a purpose. But like, for example, like in Niger and Burkina Faso and Mali right now, we lost control of that because we're like, here, we want to help you develop your country. And oh, by the way, you have to, we have to have drag queen story hour as part of it. Well, if I'm the guy who just runs Niger, I'm like, I didn't, launch a coup to do drag queen story hour. These Russian and Chinese guys, they're going to come in and be heavy-handed and want a bunch of mining rights. And, when I need them to, wipe out these villages of, the other ethnic groups I hate, they might accidentally wipe out a lot more people than intended. But you know what? I don't have to do drag queen story hour. So the soft power has been perverted and screwed up. Now, like this, actually think is good.
Yeah, let's say this. This is
this is great.
Sesame Street funding.
Give me rock.
I'm fine with it.
السلام عليكم يا جماعه اهلا وسهلا فيكم خلينا نقللكم على الهواء بالابجديه يلا خلينا نبدا
Okay.
What the hell?
You're not going to get this channel.
Don't worry, it's fine. I didn't get dinged on it.
All right.
It's fine. It's fine. This is amazing.
This terrorist propaganda.
This is so good.
This is hilarious.
This is crazy. Ceasefire. They screaming ceasefire. Oh my god.
But really, but actually doing Sesame Street and doing things like that around the world, I don't have a problem with introducing education and, you know, doing the Western subversion like that. That's fine. I think that's what we should be doing. But, you know, having, you know, in Colombia, you know, raising awareness of, like, you know,
the benefits of cocaine.
Blind quadriplegic. Yeah, the benefits of cocaine.
No, literally, the president just came out and said something to that effect.
I know, yes.
It's the same as whiskey.
Just like whiskey, yeah. But no, like, you know, there are uses for it. There are uses for getting the world into, you know, supporting us and doing what we want. But they've clearly gone out. It's mission creep. And
Eric,
now it's,
Can I just say two more things and I'm out? I'm done. I'm not going to talk the rest of the day. The whole thing I wanted to talk about was USAID. So these are the last two things I wanted to say. One, what also pisses me off about this is USAID was taking tax dollars funding Fidelity investments. And then all of the local counties nationwide were using Fidelity investments to build their local bridges and taking out loans for Fidelity to finance for these local bridges. That shit pisses me off because you are literally, it's just trading hands so that Fidelity can get a little bit off the side, right? And not a little bit. We're talking to the tune of like 20%. 20% is how much Fidelity is sometimes taking on some of these deals with local partners. So that is upsetting to me. And then finally, this is the last thing I'm going to say. Eric, you had mentioned before, look at the people who are defending this. Have you been watching and following Secretary Duffy and Hillary Clinton's exchanges on Twitter? Because it's pretty golden. His it got so heavy that his daughter ended up retweeting saying, my dad does not want to self-delete. And it's pretty golden. If you guys haven't checked out that exchange, you absolutely should. That's all I was going to say.
Secretary Duffy and Hillary.
Yeah. Head of the FAA, because she came in and basically said, oh, well, we haven't had a major accident in 16 years and under your watch this happened. He's like, okay, I guess we're going to ignore the fact that I've only been in office for, 7 days, but okay, let's go from here. He's like, I know you're projecting and really upset because you're about to be exposed and all of your friends and gifts through USAID and what they're doing over there at DOGE, but maybe don't take it out on the American people. We can't wait to see you fall apart. Like, it's just so brutal, his takedown. I'm not doing it justice.
Wow.
What did happen with that plane crash for DC? Because at first it was DEI for the FAA for the air, but then with the air traffic controllers actually did the right thing. Then it was DEI for the pilot of the chopper.
Well there were
so it was like
things.
It's like moving a little bit.
I think they're still under investigation, but the helicopter was 200 feet too high at a minimum. That one has been released. Also, the air traffic controller had only one person monitoring both channels because the other one had gone home early. So there's more to come out on that. But I think it's still under investigation, and I don't want to overreach, in what is going on with it.
But I mean, when like 99% of the time it's pilot error, the pilot, and it's one of those planes is where they weren't supposed to be. And
it was a helicopter.
Yeah,
Well, one of the aircraft
was
clearly.
Yes, the aircraft, the helicopter was aware it was not supposed to be. The plane was doing what it was supposed to do, and yeah, that's that. I mean,
also, which one can move around easier?
Well, yeah, well, I mean,
right of way is a thing in the air, and this might be the 1% time where it was ATC. To be honest, one of the cardinal rules with ATC is you don't tell a pilot, "Hey, look around. Do you see a plane around somewhere?" You don't do that. You say, "Here are the coordinates. Here's where I expect to see a plane. Here's the altitude. Are you visualizing it? Do you have visual?" And then wait for response. And if the response is no, you divert that aircraft, especially like you were saying, because it is more maneuverable. So,
he had acknowledged he was requesting visual separation. Yeah, from what I've been seeing, it's like he was probably looking at the wrong plane.
Yes,
because look at your plane 5 o'clock. Well, if you guys ever been at the airport when they line up for landing, you could see an airplane 10 miles out because it's got its lights on.
Sure.
There's a pilot who actually did it was the #1 video on YouTube for like the past couple of days. He did a reenactment where he got the radio, he got the radar, and he has it all. And he shows the helicopter pilot. There was a plane behind them, and when the traffic controller kept saying, "Do you see the plane in front? Like, and do you see the plane in front of you?" And they kept saying, "Yes, yes, we see the plane, we see the plane, we see the plane." And he kept saying, and then when they got close, he kept saying, you can hear the person, "Do you have eyes on? Do you have eyes on? Because you're right there." And they kept saying, and the person kept saying, "Yes, yes, yes." Now the air traffic controller can see them like this, but they can't see if they're up, here. So that's when it was supposed to.
The problem is
that's where they said there was like an issue, and they kept, but you hear the air traffic controller kept saying, "Do you see him? Do you see him? You're there, you're there." And then that's when the crash happened. So you hear exactly what you guys are saying is what the air traffic controller was worried about, and the pilot kept confirming that they saw that.
I think that instead of saying, "Did you see it?" though, maybe it'll wind up being a training or something to explore. You need to say, "Stop your progress." Or give a very definitive statement of pull back, go up, go down.
They have training for that. They do that. It's just this might be one of those times where these people had to die to tighten up the rules for that 1 in a million issue. But there's a lot of close calls in the air.
It's not a tightening up of the rules. It is the rule. It is the rule. I have flown for a long time, and I'm telling you, I've never had an ATC guy say over the radio, "Hey, Dani, can you look around and tell me if you see a plane?" That has not happened. What does happen is they say, ahead of you, or at 1 o'clock, at your 1 o'clock, you'll see a plane that's traveling at this speed and this altitude going this direction. I need you to do X, Y, Z. And I get instructions directly from ATC because if I'm VFR, I can then make a determination for myself and make some maneuvers. But if I'm relying on instruments, I need that 30,000-foot view of the skies. I can't determine that on my own. It's impossible, especially at night. So that's why I say I think in this case, this may have been an error from ATC, but I agree with you, Eric. It's going to be years before we find out. FAA has to finish their investigation.
And then why didn't the Army let because the pilot obviously was a woman, the pilot for the chopper. Why did the Army hide that for so long? Why did
because
they?
She worked for Biden.
Yeah. But the problem is that it was a total Streisand effect. That was stupid. I feel like you literally released every single name except for one of the crew. Now, there are accidents all the time. Fault, things like that's determined later, but there are military accidents. As soon as the family has been informed, I understand you don't notify or release the name until people's families have been informed. But once that has happened, you release all the names.
I think they were afraid of the DEI implication of it.
Well, it doesn't matter. They actually got more of it by not releasing it because they said, "Oh, it was a female, and we're not giving you the name." Well, what does that do? I mean, that just
puts you in DEI.
Yeah. Well, it's like the Ann Coulter theory. The longer they hide the identity of a shooter, it tells you a lot about what their identity was. So
Plus, if I were the family, I would request that they not release it. I've thought about this a lot, and if it were my family member, I wouldn't need political heat and everything else that was going into everything that was going on at the time. I would hate for my family to become the subject and target of a lot of vitriol.
Then don't release any of the names.
Yeah, don't release any of the names.
I agree, and I think that would have been the appropriate thing. Wait till the FAA report was done and then release the names.
I don't know if that's something they legally can do, though.
Yeah.
They can withhold the names.
No, they can't. They can like that. Okay.
Well, no, I mean either they can or they can't. But I mean,
I don't think they can.
If the family said don't release it and they withheld it, then they just did that. And I'm saying there were 3 people on that craft. Release none of them or all of them, because if you release none of them, then at least you're just saying, look, this is under investigation internally. The names will be released in a proper time. Blah blah blah. But you don't say, oh, you two, you have no rights. You're out there in public, but this family we care more about. It sends the wrong signal to everybody, and it looks awful, I feel. And it's harmful not only to the 2 that got released, but also I think it's harmful to her.
But you know what also shows me, though? It shows you that still that what Trump and them are doing is important, because look how even now they're still trying to protect DEI, even in this situation, by releasing all the names but this one, because they knew the political fallout of that. So you still have some people within the government still trying to push this particular agenda.
Oh, of course,
that's what I think they're trying to purge out now.
Well, and by the way, they'll never purge them all. I mean, it's kind of like Elon Musk bought X. There are so many social, activists that are still working for X. It's completely, it's impossible to weed everybody out. You do your best. Now, I'm on a shift to give poor Nick a chance to jump in.
As much Russ as possible.
Right. Anyway, I want to let Nick jump in because unfortunately it's not just the United States that has tragedies and mass killings. Unfortunately, Sweden had a mass killing that occurred, and the narrative that is being drawn apparently is not exactly accurate, and it may be political. So can you explain what's going on, Nick?
Yes, sadly, Sweden joined the Club of School Massacres. Just after noon, February 4th, the 911 call came in. It was a school shooting in the Risbergska School of Adult Learning, where cops responded. They were there within 5 minutes and were met by a massacre. They also saw the suspect who opened fire, then threw smoke grenades. So this guy was prepared, because the smoke grenades meant they can't just walk in. So the school was filled with smoke. They had to wait an hour. Luckily, if you can say that in this situation, the final shot they heard was the perpetrator turning the gun against himself. Now
if he started with himself, it would have been a much better.
I mean, if that was your goal, start with yourself, please. But he didn't. Now there are speculations. First speculation: is this an Islamic terrorist? No, it wasn't. Is this a Nazi? As it turns out, no, it wasn't. The suspect, and I have the photo shared. If you can share it.
Hold on. Okay.
This is Richard Anderson, native Swede. He, a couple of weeks before this event, he found out that from the social services that they were cutting him off. He has done no job in the last decade, only taken some obligatory courses, applied for work, but then he just stopped and just, I want the money, apparently. So that seems to be the factor.
So he's on what we call welfare here, is what you're saying?
Based on what you would call welfare, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So in order to get welfare here in Sweden, you have to do at least some effort. Apply for jobs, take courses to get yourself educated, or new competence, like a damn forklift driver or anything. But he decided, no, I don't want to do anything. And that seems to have been the factor that made him go to this, because this Risbergska School of Adult Learning was the place that the social services said, you have to go there. And he apparently thought to himself, okay, I'll go there and I will show you. So no apparent ideological reason, no apparent religious reason. This might change we simply don't know. But there are no electronic traces of him being radicalized in any way, shape, or form. He was adapted enough to get a hunting license. He had 4 hunting rifles. So he had and in order in Sweden to get hunting license, you have to join a club. You have to written exams, a psychological profile, all of that. He just that was good enough for him to obtain. So he decided to kill 10 people and then himself, injure 6 more.
This super chat that just came in from Intro Required, who also lives in Sweden, saying the explosive and anti-personnel grenade attacks here in Sweden are off the charts now. Is that sarcasm or is that real?
No, that's the gang war. That's unrelated to this event. That's just the gang wars.
It is a thing happening, though,
yeah.
Wow.
But,
I mean, come on. That's kind of like.
Yeah, we have one. We have one every 3 days now of those. So, but they're mostly gangs fighting gangs over marijuana. But that's unrelated. But
whoa.
So they and all of this. Yeah, sorry. But so it's unrelated to this event. But as it seems, this is an introvert guy who just simply didn't want to work.
So he's an actual lone nut.
Yeah, a lone nut.
Okay. Well,
so no ideological, no apparent religious. Just he did an introvert who didn't want to work. So he decided to go to this school of adult learning, because social services had presence in that particular. Now, this school complex has 8 schools. He chose this part because that is where they were forcing him to attend school, and he didn't want to attend school. And they in that particular school, they had adult learning, they also had Swedish for migrants in that school. So half of the killed were migrant, not migrant per se, but they were of non-Swedish origin. But as it seems, that he didn't target exclusive migrants. There were every nationality, in Swedes, Syrians, Bosnians. I mean, yeah. So, and these are the non-illegal migrants. So not even that could be construed as a base, as a reason. Of course, things might evolve. We don't know all the facts yet. But what came out of this is something that comes back to United States politics. What were the politicians' response to this? Any guesses?
Too many guns, obviously.
Too many guns, and we have to ban AR-15 type guns.
Okay, well, there you go.
Next guess. How many AR-15 type guns did this lunatic use?
Well, none, I'm sure.
None. 0.
What do you use, pistols? Because pistols actually are often used for mass shootings because they're easy, they're concealable, and they have a lot of rounds in each, and you can trade them out.
Anyway. No, he had 10 max. He had about 100 rounds, 10 rounds, around 100, and those were all emptied out. So he fired 100 times and killed 10 people and injured 6 more. And the final shot was to himself. So apparently he saved one. My theory, he saved one mag with one gun, with one bullet, but that was aimed for himself. So in less than 5 minutes, 100 rounds. And sadly, and this is how calculated evil this pathetic loser was. Smoke grenade, just to make sure that more people died, because cops couldn't get to them in time.
Amazing.
Yeah, and the government AR-15, and many people, yes, ban AR-15, and then it's a minority now who says, but he didn't use AR-15 type. No, but they look bad.
All right,
but he didn't use. Yeah, so yeah, it's this. What Sweden joins United States. If anything bad happens to guns, ban AR-15 regardless of if it's used or not.
Yeah, I mean, that's not, there's no surprise there. I want to jump again to my favorite topic of the day, which is LBL topics. Now, does everybody know that you can use hashtag LBL topics to make suggestions that may be covered on the show? And this can sometimes include memes like how Joe Neerman is using Jewish American mind tricks on the poor Israeli police force. Very interesting. This is a good topic here. LBL topics. Federal judges blocking DOGE access to government systems. Is that something that could actually be done? And the DOGE legality kind of goes into that as well. Is it even legal? Yes or no? A lot of, Congress people and whatnot are coming out saying this is illegal. You can't do that. What say all you great minds here?
I mean, the idea the executive branch doesn't have authority to examine executive agencies is highly preposterous.
Yeah, it's pretty.
And
crazy.
the idea is, oh well, he can appoint his advisors to go do whatever needs to be done. They're working for the boss, and he shows up, and they're allowed to go do stuff. This idea that you can restrict them in that way, or well, they don't have clearances. You know how it works when you're the president? I want that guy to get a security clearance. You know what happens? He gets a security clearance, even if he's completely would never get one in any other situation. You get a security clearance. I mean, we had a former president who launched his career in the home of a guy who was running
Bill Ayers, Obama. Yes.
Yeah, I was trying to be. But yes.
Oh, no,
head of the
names.
Weather Underground. Yeah, the head of the Weather Underground. Like, if you try to get if you filled out your SF-86, it was like, oh, by the way, I'm BFF with a guy who was a complete communist terrorist. You know what happens most of the time, or should happen? Sorry, you don't get a clearance. The head of the CIA was a former member. John Brennan was a former member of the U.S. Communist Party. He got a clearance. It's not impossible. Like, so the idea they can't show up is highly preposterous. They have the right to go in. And I love the one article where it says the DOGE people were screaming at the scene, like the senior established employees, and calling them idiots. And I'm like, I'm sure they are. They're probably screaming, "Shut up, boomer. I'm doing my job."
Also, with respect to the legality of DOGE, Tom Renz did, as an attorney that is on X, he did a really quick, short thread, which was a really good write-up of analyzing the legality behind DOGE and the way that Trump and his team very expertly used existing statutes and existing agencies that have been created under Congress and just repurposed it. And the whole point is that the executive branch, and he specifically took what was called the USDS, which is the United States Digital Service that was, I think, created by Obama. That it was an office that really was designed to help make the cyber interconnectivity more efficient. And he sort of repurposed that into, we're going to use this agency to make it more efficient. And the executive branch frequently will take existing statutes and sort of interpret them as they see fit. And then it basically would come down to, a court appointment. If you're going to say he's using this agency incorrectly, and the executive branch has pretty wide latitude on how they use existing statutes. So he basically just repurposed an Obama law and used it to give legality to DOGE without requiring Congress to pass some new law. And it was actually it's a legally brilliant move because it's so much more difficult to challenge it rather than saying, you have to go through Congress if you want to get funding or do anything. The funding's already built into it. All the employees you need to hire that's already built in under the existing statute that goes all the way back to Obama. So I thought it was a great breakdown by Tom Renz, and I probably can link it in the chat below, but it really explains how this is an actually legal entity, and it shows you the power of the executive branch comes in large part based on their ability to interpret existing statutes as suits their agenda.
I think when you talk about, because I think the issue with DOGE isn't their authority to act, but to the extent which they can exercise that authority. So we all know the difference between someone who's confirmed by the Senate, because they can then wield the power of the executive branch being confirmed by the Senate. But the issue is, could DOGE do that? Could DOGE actually wield that authority without that type of authority going into, let's say, the Treasury Department and so forth and so forth? So that's why, I don't know if you remember, it was before it was a read-only access, right? They can do read-only access. So what I do think the intelligence of the Trump administration is that, okay, we're not going to avoid DOGE actually having to be confirmed by the Senate. What they did was they said, we're going to make them kind of like an advisory board, and then we'll do it through, like, for instance, with USAID. They went to Marco Rubio and said, Marco Rubio, we want you to institute these regulations, because Marco Rubio has the authority to do it. They went to the Treasury Director and said, the Treasury Director, you have the authority to do it. And they give, but now the issue is DOGE says, okay, we need to be more granular. We need to go in and now get all the data and be able to analyze it. And now the issue is, should they be able to get this data to be able to analyze it without that congressional authority to act? And that, I think, is going to be the tension.
Well, I still don't understand the idea that there's no congressional authority for the executive agency to examine their own data. I mean, ultimately, that's what they're doing. It's the executive agency's data, the Treasury Department. It's their data.
Yes, but don't forget before. All right, so remember before they got their guy in, it was it was the civil service guy, and the civil service guy was the one pushing back on DOGE. Well, you can't get this, you can't get this, you can't get this. Now that Trump's guy is in there, Trump's guy is like, you can do whatever you want. And now the argument is that DOGE is not. They're not part of the Treasury Department. They aren't Treasury agents, so they aren't authorized by statute to look at all these Treasury, to have this full access. Right. And that's what the argument now is.
And I understand, but yeah, that's like why Scott Bessett's like, okay, fine, they're working for me now.
Exactly.
But there's also funny parts, like he had that interview with the one reporter, and she's like, but they have access to the stuff. He's like, no, that's at the Federal Reserve. I'm not in charge of that. Yeah. You're worried about crap I don't control anyway. So, like, remember, at the end of the day, all this really is just, oh my God, they're gonna find out what we've been doing. That's really what this comes
that's
down
what it
to.
is. Yes.
This isn't about, oh no,
and we're just at the tip of the iceberg.
This is how Hitler started, guys. He audited things. He tried to balance the books.
Okay, new impeachment's already underway.
There's two things I want to say to that, which is the left keeps screaming, it's only 1%, it's less than 1% of our overall spending. First and foremost, that's not a defense. That's just an embarrassing statement about how bloated in general our overall budget is. That if they would have a budget instead of 7 trillion, if they had a budget of 70 trillion, it would be less than 1/10%. That wouldn't make it any better. That doesn't make it any better.
Forged from his grandma was only worth $25. Really?
What's 1% of 5 trillion?
Yeah,
exactly.
1% of 5 billion is a huge number.
It's actually their number that they spend is 40 billion. But the other thing that should excite you about the fact that it's just 1% is how much more waste are we going to uncover in other agencies? This is this agency. There are other agencies which are
guess who said is next? Hegseth is opening DOD for audit.
Whoa. Oh, thank God.
Well,
and 1% is huge. You guys think about it. If you're working 100 hours and the government's taxing you on those 100 hours, right? And let's say that the budget is based on your actual tax dollars, your actual labor. That's 1%. That's 1 hour that you get back that the government doesn't take from you. So I don't care what percentage it is. Every freaking dime, I want a refund. I want my money back. The government has effed up. I want my money back. I don't understand why this is so hard. I think they need to get a bunch of Karen attorneys in there.
Are you able to get it back?
Huh?
How would you get it back? How would you get it back? Who would you assert the claim against?
I don't know.
I don't know, but at least stop taking it.
Right, 100%.
They need a bunch of Karen attorneys in there with like Karen haircuts.
To what Dani, to exactly what you're saying is our current people are like, well, if it's already committed funds, you can't overturn. You have to spend what Congress wants you to spend. Here's the thing. Our appropriations expires March 14th. We don't have an
Yep.
annual budget. The only budgeting we have is until March 14th.
The payday loans run out the 14th. We need more.
And look, under the congressional budget, there's some mandatory spending and there is some discretionary spending. So the discretionary spending, you would assume you don't have to spend, and the mandatory spending, okay, well that dies as of March 15th. On the Ides of March, any penny that's been appropriated is no longer. There's nothing appropriate for March 15th and beyond. And that's the thing, is that we don't have to wait till the end of the fiscal year to start seeing these things correct, because Congress has sucked so much at creating a decent budget for years. Now this actually plays into actually being able to cut the waste much sooner than we otherwise would have had to do if they actually competent at creating a budget.
Question for our foreign correspondents here, Ian and Nick. What about in your countries? I mean, are you having this type of cost overrun problem, auditing going on, or if not, I mean, how are you guys reacting to the concept of DOGE going through right now and looking at the budget?
I mean, right now the sentiment in Canada is fairly anti-American, so whatever the U.S. does, Canada is going to not be okay with. That's pretty much how that goes.
Yeah, I had a whole bunch of Canadians yelling at me the other day because I put, Canada caves to Trump. And they're like, no, he didn't. It was up the vine, I was like, okay.
Runkle, I hope in Canada you guys don't decide to have we're going to do a tea party, but we're going to shove barrels of oil in the harbor.
Well, the net result of all of this may be that the political sentiment changes to support the existing party.
Yes, that'd be horrible, though.
And so the net result of this may be that the gun bans that I've been very thrilled about possibly going away end up being preserved by the direct actions of Trump. So not a huge fan of that myself.
No.
So.
Yeah. And over here, I mean, Sweden is still more or less a socialistic country. So not even the right-wing parties in the government say they want what insight in how we spend money. No, that's bad. Do it for them. Do it for those guys. Yeah, good. Not for us. So yeah, but something happened down on the continent, because all of a sudden some of the Eastern European countries, they believe this is good, but they want it to be done on a European Union level, which is interesting because that in itself, well, in order for the European Union to do this, then they have to have the power to go through independent nations' economy. And the only way they can do that is if we go full on the United States of Europe, which is quite weird because that is complete 180 turn against everything they have been.
United States of Europe is next on Trump's list.
Yes. Nick, our future American brother, we welcome you.
But then again, we also one of the big things here is that Denmark has offered Canada to become a member of the European Union.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay.
That's
technically Canada and Denmark do share a border.
So far, Greenland
Land
is
border,
only
in fact.
justifiable as someone who cares about American intervention. Greenland is the only one that makes sense. That's the only one that makes sense for American interests. That's
if
the
we
only
can buy it, if we can buy it, and they
if we can buy it, it's a good deal.
Already, and this is something that had been in the talks for a long time, but Denmark is now very open to the. Oh, hey, you want to increase your presence up in the Thule Air Base, way up in the north of Greenland? They're allowing a greater and greater American presence there now.
Oh, that's good to hear.
So, yeah,
good
I'm just saying they're starting to realize, and for Denmark, for example, they changed the coat of arms of the royal house. Before Greenland and the Faroe Islands had just one little corner of part of one of the quadrants of the coat of arms, but now they've got their own pieces, and it's their way of trying to hey, look, guys, we actually do care about you. You're part of the family. Big hug.
Representation.
Please don't vote
DEI.
on the website.
No.
Don't hold.
I take that back. Panama also makes sense. Panama Canal, we
100%.
also need to take back 100%. So that
we already did it once.
Yeah, we did it once before. We'll take it again. It's fine.
The way Trump has been operating so far this term. We saw do a little bit as Trump 45, but the way he operates is he makes a ridiculously large ask as to what it is that he wants.
Like Gaza.
Right. And I think and with Gaza, and that's what I actually wrote about with respect to Gaza. He makes a huge ask saying, this is what I want. I want to take over Greenland. And everyone laughs at it. But the point is, then he repeats it a few more times, and the target or potential victim of that expansionism that he's asking for ends up running to the table to give him something rather than him coming saying, hey, can you please allow me to access Greenland's water? Instead,
anchoring.
Yeah, he basically makes a huge ask, and then they come running to him saying, please, what do you want? Please don't rape me too hard. That's essentially what ends up happening.
And but when you start threatening your neighbors with rape, it really doesn't make them your friends. That's the problem. That was the word he just used.
I know. I was going to yell at him, but I'm
sorry.
I'm just saying. Everybody do me a favor. If somebody uses the wrong word, don't do it again.
The whole YouTube thing. I didn't realize it's a bad word. I'm sorry.
Jesus. Anyway. I definitely don't agree with all that. The Gaza thing is going to get very, very interesting. That's splitting MAGA in half. I mean,
he pulled back on the Gaza thing a little bit. The press secretary did it.
Only in the sense of, there's not going to be any troops. I do think that his hope is that Saudi and Jordan and Egypt will say, no, we got it. Just stay out. We got it. We'll do it.
But I'm gonna be honest, my anti-war friends here, but suggesting moving 1.7 million people out of the Gaza Strip and American troops, that sounds a lot like invasion to me. Invading these people, and let's just be clear. The argument of the place has been bombed out. Just imagine we bomb the place out. So instead of letting you go back to your homes, we're going to relocate you and take it over and make it a paradise. The rubble.
One exception.
Really?
We didn't bomb them out. Okay, we did not bomb them out.
They used our bombs.
We didn't bomb them out, but they've been bombed out, and now we're going to build a paradise on the dead bodies of the Palestinians. It's I think I understand anchoring, but this guy kind of went a little far with that. And I don't want any American troops on the ground in Gaza. I think that's ridiculous.
I don't want to see any troops. I don't want to see any money. I don't want to see anything. That is an ideal scenario. There are no troops or money, and if that is not what Trump is thinking, if he is thinking of making that, I want any monies that go in there to be an investment that we actually can recoup. I'll tell you this much. I think what Trump is hoping for with this particular thing, my thought, which I expressed on X, but I don't know if I really talked about it so much here, is I think that he's hoping that he recognizes that the idea of an American presence in Israel is something that would just be repugnant to the entire Muslim
world.
Middle
East, not Israel.
No, well, I'm saying is taking over a portion of the Gaza or Middle Eastern territory there. Okay, so the idea of Muslim ideology believes that the entire Levant should be under the exclusive control of Islam. And that's a major part of their objection to the existence of the state of Israel. Well, the only thing worse than having the state of Israel there from an Islamist perspective is having the mighty animal of the United States actually seizing a portion of the Levant in Gaza. And let me tell you this, Gaza itself, it's obviously war ravaged now, but the property is on the Mediterranean. It really could be probably
Dubai Part 2.
It could be Dubai Part 2. Right. It could be such beautiful and wealthy territory and really valuable territory if it was not being ravaged by war and violence. And I think what Trump is basically thinking is if he actually can sell the notion that the United States is serious about taking it over, it now creates a whole different political environment in the Middle East. If you're a country which is willing to be allied with Israel, you yourself are in a political danger Because if you're the UAE, if you're Saudi Arabia, and you're really like, you know what, I don't really care that much about Israel being here, but if I say that publicly, I'm going to be deposed and executed. I can't say that. I can't help them with this Palestinian situation without literally seeing myself, my wife, and kids and family being eradicated and literally strung up and hanged. So I can't do that. So I'm going to come out here and give this speaking point. But if Trump comes out and he starts saying, well, we're planning on going in there in Gaza and taking over, you're going to see these big, massive spas and resorts. There's going to be a big hotel with a big, giant golden T and American flag on it. That is really repugnant to the Islamic world. And he might be thinking that opens up a doorway now for UAE, Saudi Arabia, or any of 50 other Muslim nations who are not quite so hostile to Israel, come in there and say, you know what, we are going to go in, take over Gaza, and keep out the great Satan of America, and that's why we're doing it. And that way they'll pick up this really rich territory and they'll be hopefully less hostile to Israel. And perhaps that could bring peace to the region if the Gaza Strip was taken over by UAE and Saudi Arabia, and those countries could be saving face by saying, we're not trying to help Israel, we're trying to keep out the great Satan of America. That's the speculation that I have as to what Trump is thinking, that he's trying to put factors into play that make it easier for other Arab nations to come in there and be the ones who are actually controlling Gaza.
Yeah, it goes back to that, what we talked about earlier about these unreasonable demands. Yeah, but that's a common tactics in negotiations. I go through it every week with people not unlike Trump. So yeah, I actually, that makes perfect sense.
The problem is with the unreasonable negotiations, you do have to put them within the realm. Like if I go and I'm looking, when I'm looking to buy property, which I just did, you put a low offer, but you don't send them like, hey, I'm going to just take it with my guns. Or you don't say, hey, I'm going to give you $12, because then they'll be like, yeah, we're just cutting off negotiation.
No, I'm going to push back on that. I'm going to push back on that hard, because here's the thing. I think the rest of the world has forgotten that America can. Not that we should, not that we could, but that we actually can. That's the problem. And that's what Trump is doing, is he's reasserting to both our allies and our enemies that we can do these things. Not that we should, but that we can. And that's important.
And that he's crazy enough that he might.
Right. The crazy factor has to settle a case, just like when I go to settle a case, I file the damn complaint, or I have that complaint ready to file in hand, and I send it to opposing counsel. I say, do you want to talk? Because I sent you an invite last week and I didn't hear anything back. So I'm just letting you know, we are asking for X million of dollars. So if you want to go down that route, we can. I don't want to. I would rather be friends. So do you want to talk or not? And if it's what gets them to the negotiating table, then I'm going to support it. Even if it's crazy, and even if it really affects me too, because it's trade right now is rough, and currency imbalances are really rough right now. So
I love the currency imbalance. I mean,
yeah, it's good for you, Nick.
The American dollar is worth so much more.
It's so good right now, but
it's so excellent to be a streamer. I mean, if I'm making $100 for a month ago was worth roughly 1,100 Swedish krona. Now it's worth almost 1,200 Swedish krona.
Nick is now doing shots of champagne on his stream.
Yeah.
Nick is doing, yeah.
I'm making bank over here.
But a wise litigator takes that complaint and goes, okay, buddy, whatever, rolls their eyes, starts drafting their answer, and then says, sure, let's go ahead and have a meeting. And then utilizes that meeting to gain information on their opponent. And I've made very, very good friends and relationships from opposing counsel as a result of the fact that they know that I can, and I know that I can. There's a mutual respect, and we both come to the negotiating table knowing that we're both willing to fight for what we want.
But
so I see nothing wrong with that. That's all.
We've all negotiated deals before, and there's a difference between an offer that insults you versus an offer that's just a lowball offer, right?
Yes.
And I think Ian was making a difference between an insulting offer of $12 for a $1 million house when we're talking about reasonable. I think that's the distinction here. I do think saying we're gonna, when he was asked, so we're gonna send troops to Gaza, and he was like, that's on the table. I think that was kind of in the insulting because that's World War III. Let's just not even.
Well, it's insulting to us, the American people.
Troops to Gaza is World War III. We all know that. That's not even a question. So I don't think he'll go that far. But it's interesting to say. But in practice, that's never going to happen unless you guys can tell me I'm wrong. Tell me sending American troops to take over Gaza is not the start of World War III.
It better as hell not start. Well, we better as hell not send troops there. And that's the thing. When you go to the negotiating table, you're acting in the interest of your client. Mm-hmm. And so if Trump is not acting in the interest of the American people, which again, I personally don't think that invading Gaza would be, then he shouldn't be doing it and he shouldn't be threatening it. You shouldn't be, spelling out threats that your ass can't cash. That's just how it is.
He would be going against everything that he has run on both times about the quagmires getting in the Middle East, everything we did in Iraq, everything in Afghanistan. He ran on this no more foreign. If we get involved,
no more nation building.
Yeah, that's nation building. I don't know how else you can call it anything but that.
It's the definition of nation building. We're going to send the troops in, kick everybody out there, build it into paradise. That's definition.
Greenland is a potential purchase. If he buys it, that's not nation building. That's an exchange. It's buying a property. I don't see the problem. It's just like Alaska. But yeah, the whole Gaza thing, that definitely and it's upsetting MAGA themselves. I mean, his base. So not just the public, but his base is going, wait a minute here. What are you doing? And I think that's going to be a challenging thing. I'm quite sure we'll be talking about it on America's Untold Stories today at 5:30. If anyone is interested, I have a funny feeling that my show partner may have a different opinion than I do too. So there could be some, there could be a little bit of tension going in there. I don't know. I hope not. I'm sure the chat's going to be quite lively. But what is everybody else doing to wrap things up? Dani, what do you have coming up?
We are finishing up the Baldoni complaint, and then we will move over to Blake Lively's complaint that was filed. My guess is they'll probably amend, and then we're going to look at some of the spurious complaints that followed that. There's a little bit of a dearth in terms of really famous or popular cases going on in criminal aspects. So my focus right now is on the civil side. We also are going to be covering a lot of these confirmation hearings. As you guys already know, a certain confirmation was delayed, which was a little bit expected.
Like his potential bosses was delayed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So this is going to get very interesting. And I think it's good to go back and look at the highlights. And frankly, I want to talk about Trump's tax plans and the implications that might have on investors moving forward for those who are interested. So, yep, that's what we're up to. It's going to be a ton of fun. And we have a grifting stream probably coming up next week. Go ahead.
Did I see Elaine coming out supporting Blake Lively? Did I see that?
You did see that. And it's so funny because I made like one post comparing this to Johnny Depp, and oh my gosh, I was shocked. I was both a misogynist and a feminist in the same post, and I have no idea why I was labeled as either. I mean, I feel like the evidence is presented right now really weighs in favor of Baldoni, and if there's anything I feel at this point is just sorry for this poor guy, and a lot of disgust towards these Hollywood elites who seem to be working together to destroy this man's life. That's just based on the evidence we have right now. These are very fact-specific cases, obviously, so we're going to have to wait until she has the opportunity to give a little bit more than what she's given. If that's all she's got, though, she's in big trouble. This is not going to end well for her or Ryan Reynolds.
All right, Ian, I know you're following that diligently. What else do you have going on?
Yeah, I've been covering that as well. It's kind of striking just how badly they've played this, because there's always two battles, right? There's the PR battle around the court case, and then there's the court case itself. And it seems like they're on track to lose both really badly, but already, like, she basically set her house on fire. And it is tremendous to watch that. Also covering, so I'll be covering that on Monday, probably some more on that. There's another suit that's weighted in that is probably not going anywhere because it's based on the whole like, hey, you said all this stuff in court. It's like, well, what's there's privilege issues there. Covering some of the Karen Reed stuff as well. I've got a video that I've got to get out on the GWAX lawsuit, which is now ongoing. It's entered the sort of hot phase. That is a gun company getting sued by, amongst other things, it's ostensibly a IP case, except there is no IP. And
is that still going?
Yes,
that is going to trial.
Yeah.
What?
And
GWAX doesn't know how to take an L.
Wow. Oh wow.
GWAX really ought to have sued their lawyer because they bought this company and they're like, so we got all this IP, right? It's like, well, you got all the IP they have, which is nothing. There's no copyrights. There's no patents. There's no anything. And that's time to sue your lawyer. But instead they're suing the company they bought things from. But they're also partially funded by this guy who is massively anti-gun. And the issue is IP over an AR-15 design. And so, of course, there is no IP as mentioned, but so he is in deposition saying, I hate the AR-15. I would like it to not exist. And so that's a whole fun, package there. Covering as well the whole chaos with Cody Wilson, who's getting sued for actually stealing IP in the most obviously lawsuit trap way. Like there was so many things that say, hey, this is a giant trap.
Is it really a trap when you intentionally trigger it, knowing you're triggering it, and you do so with a smile on your face?
I don't think he knew he was getting sued, but yeah, it's going to be a whole gong show. So there's a whole bunch of fun things going there.
And the best thing about that lawsuit, guys, if you like the Tonsil Twins stuff, David Gingras is Cody Wilson's lead attorney.
Yeah, it was that's a choice. It's like, hey, who's getting clowned on the most in like short of Jeanette Braun, who I'm also clowning on. But I guess as an aside, Canada is also potentially considering legalizing BDSM, which is currently actually legal here. So also fun.
Wow. That's
interesting.
Good times there. Okay. So for your next vacation plans, if you are into a side of kink, Nick, how's BDSM in Sweden?
Smacking around. I don't know. Strap on. No. Oh, yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
What do you have coming up?
I have. Well, the continues on the ASAP Rocky trial. The judge is finally fed up with the attorney's shenanigans. Today, he held a speech in front of the attorneys that was very, very interesting. Hopefully, he will enforce what he actually said. I will cover this as soon as this stream is over. I will start that one. Then, of course, once the ASAP trial is concluded, I will continue with the other California case, the celebrity hairdresser murder trial, where they now, 7 years later, put his wife. And it's, again, I don't know how they got it to trial, because the only evidence they have now compared to 7 years ago is the co-killer of the celebrity hairdresser, who got the options: either we prosecute you and you will get life in prison, or you testify against her and you walk free. That's the only difference between now and 7 years ago. So, yeah. That will be interesting. I hope that picks up steam, because the view count hasn't been overwhelming. But then again, it's at the same time as the ASAP Rocky trial.